It feels like there's a million 3x3 rack cable systems out there. So to stand out from the crowd, you've got to do something special. Enter Bells of Steel's Kraken. Rather than do what Rep did with the Athena and Rogue with the Indian, countless others have done, Bells has put their own unique twist onto this, which I think will appeal to the right people, but it's definitely better in certain situations than others. So what Bell's done to make this unique is rather than having a single pull point off a trolley, like essentially everyone else, they've integrated the dual pull points of their cable towers into their rack cable systems. Let me show you how this works because it'll allow me to demonstrate better why you may want a Kraken over other options. Now, when you buy one of these things, you can buy a single stack or 2 at a time. Actually, when you buy this, you've got a ton of options. You can put them on Bell's Hydra, their 3x3 5/8 inch rack, their Manicore, that's this one, their 1-inch rack. Throw it on a 4-post, a 6-post. You can even build a Colossus, which adds Bell Smith attachment onto it. Save money and go plate loaded or get the 210-pound selectorized stacks. And there's various heights and depths to choose from. But that's not what I meant. With most systems like Reps or Rogues, sure, you can buy a single stack, but it doesn't always make a ton of sense. Yeah, you're saving money, but you're stuck doing only unilateral movements. Now, with the Kraken, I can do unilateral movements, but I can also grab the other pull point and do bilateral movements. And as a generalization, I would say the Kraken is more versatile than other options, and it does most movements pretty well. For unilateral movements with the Kraken, I've got a 2-to-1 pulley ratio, which is going to give me plenty of cable travel. It's also going to give me small weight increments, which is great for functional trainer type movements. I got 5-pound weight jumps here. And most importantly for us, it gives me a small starting weight of 5 pounds. And that's great for us because with most of these systems for Winnie, they all start at 10 pounds and that just doesn't work for her. Of course, it also has its trade-offs. And I'm not going to sit here and argue that a single stack is always superior to dual independence. It's not. It may have some advantages, but there are some pitfalls as well. So for example, if I pull 2 hands at once, I've now converted this to a 1-to-1 cable ratio, which cuts my cable travel in half. That may limit you. Now, in reality, on a 90-inch stack like this, I haven't had issues, but it's something to note. When I pull from here, my resistance is great, but as I move through this full range of motion, the resistance is going to fall off a little bit in the contraction and the squeeze portion of the lift. And as you can see, I'm getting some cable rubbing, and that's because, I'm gonna tie myself up here, that's because these pull points are like 3 inches apart. Also, that's pretty slick right there. If I do things like a rear delt fly, you may get some cable rubbing right there. Again, I don't know if you can hear that on the mic. You may get a little cable rubbing because, again, the pull points are so close together. Of course, you can just do unilateral movements to fix that. And while I'm hammering on Bells, I do think it's pretty good overall. I'm just, trying to be thorough here. If you look here, both of my arms are linked. Look at those sick dance moves. I'm like an 80s exercise star right now, so subscribe for those dance moves. But it's not a true unilateral experience. But everything's gonna have its trade-offs, and overall, I think there's a ton you can do off of a single Kraken. Bringing us to this side. Now, before I pull on this trolley and it jumps around more than the pulleys did in that Vulcan review we did, let me give you a little bit of a background story. We've had this rack and cable system for well over 6 months. And when we first got it in, I didn't think it was ready for review. So I sent Kayvon, the owner of Bells of Steel, a ton of feedback, and they've implemented a lot of those changes. And these trolleys best show it. This is the original trolley with the original parts. This is the updated one. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is not every company listens to the feedback of the community. And I've given Bells of Steel every reason to not work with me, and yet here we are. All right. Since the Kraken can fit on both the Hydra, their 5/8 rack, and the Manticore, their 1-inch rack, Bells was originally trying to use similar pieces between the two of them. And I get why they're trying to do that. They want to manufacture and stock less pieces, but it ran into some problems. So one of the things I pointed out, so here's a 5/8 pin, and it works on the Manticore because there's 5/8 keyhole right here, even though this is a 1-inch rack. But if you're doing certain movements where you're pulling upward, it would jump around the trolley a little bit. So they've now swapped it to have different pins. I'm just gonna run around awkwardly, and now it doesn't do that anymore. They've also changed the roller bearings and the rollers in here because this sounds kind of like my kids' Fisher-Price toys after they leave them in the sandbox for a while. So now this is much smoother, and it sounds, not only sounds better, but it moves better than this one. And then just to show a little attention to details and things they caught on is they've improved this viewing window. I actually kind of think this is a useless feature in trolleys because nobody is sitting here doing this. At least I hope you're not doing that, to see the number in the window, but it's nice that they improved it. All I do is just move it up and look here. Again, it's a nice catch. All right, the reason I came over here in the first place. The problem with a 2-to-1 ratio is if I set this to the max weight, which is 210 pounds, and then pull, I'm actually only getting half the weight. I have plenty of cable travel. This is a terrible idea, I'm not gonna do that, but half the weight, so 105 pounds. So what Bell's has done with the Kraken to make theirs different is they give you this little connector so you can link the stacks. Now I know I'm gonna get questions in the comments. These little swivel connectors I got off Amazon, I'll link them in the description. But now, when I link the two, this 210 pounds is actually 210 pounds. So I'm gonna make this look really light. And that's one of the advantages of the Kraken. If you're using this for heavy movements like low rows, you don't need to use a gym pin or whatever else to add more weight. And because of the adjustable trolley, you don't have to row off the floor. Now, I'm not saying lat pulls or even low rows off a system like this is ideal. It's not, but Bell's of Steel does have a lat pull down and low row add-on for their Hydra and Manicore racks, so it's hard to be super critical. This is just what I've seen a lot of people do who are trying to save some money or trying to overcome the limitations of using a functional trainer style trolley as a do-it-all cable solution. And I think in that circumstance, the Kraken does it a lot better than others. The problem is if you're super strong, obviously handsome, and maybe on a cut, so you're a little lighter than normal, it can be a little bit of a problem getting yourself into position and then holding yourself in position and bracing. I do have a seat belt I've used in the past to help with that, but it's gonna be the same type of thing with lat pulls. Although bracing really isn't an issue here because there's all kinds of solutions from different companies that you can use to help you with that. But at 6 foot tall, I'm gonna have issues getting a full range of motion. Of course, I can fix that by sitting on the floor, look at how smooth that was, and getting intimate with my upright, but obviously it's not an ideal solution for everything, but at the same time, I'm using a single stack to do everything a functional trainer, lat pull down, and low row would do, so it's a much cheaper solution. And of course, you can get 2 stacks, but the question then becomes, does this concept make as much sense when you have 2 of them? The beauty of Bell's of Steel's cable towers, which is essentially what this is, a beefed up version of that, is they're compact, versatile budget solutions. With dual stacks, I think for the right person this can make sense, but now there's a lot of alternatives and competition. So apparently that's how we do things here. I don't even think that's the right height. As you'll see, as a functional trainer, it works very well. I have no issues with cable travel, no cable rubbing, and the resistance is much more consistent because my pull points are further apart. I still have that low starting weight of 5 pounds in small weight increments. And I would say this is like a 7 out of 10 on the smoothometer. What I mean by that is this is a pretty complex system. This cable and this cable are the same cable. So it's routing up and around through the weight stack. It's got to go and do that same adventure through the other sides of pulleys, go through the floating pulley. It's a lot. And as you add more complexity to a system, you're going to get a little bit more friction. And this isn't as simple as something like Rogue's Indy, probably the smoothest system I've ever used, or even Rep's Athena. So even though Bell's is using quality components throughout, the bearings in these aluminum pulleys are fantastic. It's just not as smooth as some of those higher end systems, even though it's very good. Now this might be a little nitpicky, but if I set this to the lightest weight, now I actually didn't come in here to complain about that, but 2 nitpicks in here. Bell's, you're welcome. I bet you're really appreciative of setting this free for a review, but can we normalize putting a hole for the weight selector pin on the lightest weight Mag pins are cool and all, but they fall down. I've nailed Rogue, Fringe, GetRx, and others on this. Can we just give me one more hole to work with? But that's not actually why I came in here. If I set it to the lightest weight and I pull on this, you might be able to see up top here, I've had times where the weight gets stuck only on that lightest weight. I swear sometimes it happens. It's just not happening right now. The reason being is if you look at these weight guide rods, this is the same rod as the 84-inch tall rack. And for the 90-inch tall rack I've got, they add this little 6-inch extension. So sometimes if I'm nitpicking and being completely honest, I feel that little nick of that seam right there, and I've had the plate get stuck. It's not my favorite feature of this rack. I get why Bell's does it, so they can manufacture and stock less pieces, but it just could be a better done system. Now, when you want to connect the sides, which you can do by connecting these two inner pull points to give you 210 pounds, or you can connect the outside ones to give you 400 pounds. And if you're doing that, first of all, you're a lot stronger than me. I don't need that kind of weight, but you're still going to run into the same problems you would before with low rows and lat pull downs, meaning on a lat pull, you might have range of motion issues, although you can sit on the ground. And with low rows, it may be difficult to brace yourself, although there are a lot of aftermarket solutions like GetRx center post or military bench frame that you could probably use to work around that. To connect the two, you can use something like Darko's Longy Bar, which is what I'm using here, or there's options like Body Solid's double swivel aluminum bar. I should also mention, since it's coming in clutch right now, this is Bells of Steel's optional pegboard for the Kraken. And I really like it. It's using standard size pegboard hooks. So this basket right here, I just got off Amazon a few years ago. This is a magnetic hook from our storage hacks video. And it's really versatile and cool. I just find it a little pricey for what it is. So who does the Kraken make sense for, and how does it rank against the competition? I think if I was in the market for a new rack, I'd seriously consider putting one of these on a Hydra or Manticore rack. It adds a ton of functionality without affecting the footprint of your rack. Well, except for the 4 inches it adds to the top, but it's not going to affect the function of your rack. I can still squat, bench, and do other lifts in here. Although if you're using a shorter 4-post rack, it might start feeling a little cramped. But because you can do so much off of a single Kraken, it may end up being one of your cheaper options. A single plate loaded version is going to cost you around $650 shipped, and a selectorized version can go all the way up to $1,400. So it's not cheap, but if the alternative is 2 of Rep's Athenas, that's going to cost me more, and I don't think I'm gaining any functionality. Would I put 2 of these on a rack? It really depends on your situation. If you have 2 people working out at once, or you're supersetting a ton of cable work, that might make a lot of sense. If you're just looking for functional trainer type capabilities in your rack, I think I'd probably go back and look at those dual Athenas. They're a little cheaper than dual Kraken, and that's whether it's plate loaded or selectorized, and the fit and finish on Rep's unit is a little nicer too. You just can't do as much off of a single Athena as you can off a single Kraken. If you want to step it up from there, Rogue's Indy is phenomenal, but you're going to pay more for that American-made quality versus these imported options. If you need the versatility of this or are already in Bell's 3x3 rack ecosystem, I think this is a really cool addition to what's become a super stacked lineup of rack integrated cable systems. And I think overall Bell's has done a pretty good job with this. Thank you so much to our patrons for making videos like this possible, and thanks for watching.